Hello everyone, this is A.G. Billig and I welcome you to a new episode of the Self-Publishing Mastery Talks. Last week I gave a workshop on branding for authors in Palos Verdes for the Southwest manuscriptors. And before I dived into my presentation, I asked the people there, what do you think an author brand is? And I got all sorts of answers like my logo and the style of my writing and that kind of things. So obviously, although lately we are more and more concerned about our author brand, we are not really familiar with the term. And that's why for today, I invited on our show someone who is a true expert in branding, one of the top experts here in Southern California. Welcome and thank you for joining our show, Dave Parker III. It's great to have you here.
Hey, everyone. A lot of conversation nowadays about building brands or branding. Unfortunately, probably the most overused word in the business environment and also with personal branding today. A lot of people stressing tactics versus platform and strategy, kind of the old Simon Sinek why you're who you are or what you do or what your company does. Mm-hmm. So what we do is more from a platform and strategy standpoint, and eventually we get the tactics, but it's more of a platform and strategy view. You know, I see today that everybody seems to be a branding expert or a marketing guru, subject matter expert of some type or another, whether it's personal or on the business side. And on my end, we've done everything from Fortune 500 to personalities.
Tell us a little more about yourself and what do you like most about branding and being an expert in this field, because you are for real.
Well, a lot of experience in dealing with everything from the startup community, which is hot right now, to emerging companies, SMBs, and then all the way up through. Have done turnarounds based on building brand for Fortune 100 companies and have done a variety of things. Came out of the merchant banking business of all things at one point in time, ended up in the advertising agency business. And of course, that is around a lot of communications and tactical type of things that you need to do. When you think of organizations like McKinsey or Boston Consulting or Booz Allen that make their living from the planning standpoint, you have to execute that, but the platforms have to be solid. So a lot of experience, a lot of different industries and cross-pollinating industries, you know, from one industry to another. I think some of it too is also being fortunate enough to start in consumer packaged goods, kind of classic type of brand training.
I should tell our viewers that we met not at an industry event. We met at a creative event at Creative Mornings here in Orange County.
Again, back to cross-pollinating. I go to startup meetings. I go to corporate meetings. You know, I try to stay up on things, including being in touch with a lot of the creative people, the art directors, the freelancers that are out there. You know, I just think you have to be aware of what's going on in the marketplace more than, I guess, the classic advertising agency focus groups or things that are going on, media testing that are in a controlled environment. I think you have to be outside, I term it living research, and you have to be aware and see what's going on. You know, if you want to know what people are wearing, obviously you have to be on street level, for example. If you're into basketball gear, you have to be out on the basketball court. You just can't be in a vacuum to know what's going on. Again, I term it living research, but you have to be out there and be aware. And I think from a business standpoint, it helps to be aware of what's going on in the business environment also, but also culturally aware, which is where a lot of brands really fall apart nowadays. They're being disrupted. We're really in an era where innovation is a driver and there's a lot of disruption going on. And brands themselves are channels that they're traditionally selling into being ripped apart, the brands themselves therefore are being ripped apart, and people just don't have any answers. And I think it gets back to, being able to build brands consistently, that it has to be platform driven.
What books do you like to read?
I tend to fall into nonfiction. I like history, especially American history here. I think we have an altered view, and especially also of civics here in the U.S., unfortunately. From a business standpoint, I like, one of my favorite authors is Peter Kostenbaum. He's a former retired philosophy professor and was a business guru with Fortune 100 companies.
What do you prefer? Paperbacks, hardcovers, digital, or audiobooks, or all of it, depending where you are?
I prefer softback. What they say, numbers and short titles often work the best because that's what consumers gravitate to, and it's definitely not what Peter Kostenbaum, what he's known for. Audiobooks are great, and I like really good speakers also. So I listen to motivational people. I listen to spiritual stuff. Religious leaders, I think, are fascinating. Tony Robbins, in addition, from an audio standpoint, because he's an NLP guy, neuro-linguistic programming.
I think for authors who are into these self-help, spirituality, how-to type of books, personal transformation, I think he can be a great case study in terms of branding.
You want cross-platform to work. And naturally nowadays, from a marketing standpoint, whether it's marketing a food or beverage product or marketing a book, we think of the channels that you market through and what tactics you're using to communicate. I think you have to take a couple of steps back and look at platform of the author, platform of the book itself, or whatever the product is, and then the strategy on how to get to the market, what the market is and how to get to the market. Often, whether it's a consumer product or a B2B service or a book, I think the natural inclination is to immediately think and get to tactics versus platform and strategy on how to then, the tactics will take care of themselves, communication, if you have a solid platform and solid strategy.
Usually when it comes to authors and they speak about brand and platform, when they talk about platform, they imply their author website and their social media channels.
Those are tactics. Your website, your social media, the question is, what is on there? Who is the author? What have they published? How does that fit into the marketplace? Really, to build any brand, whether that's for an author or whether that's for a company manufacturing consumer products or a retailer or anybody else, it's the same formula. And to build a brand is really comprised of three things. Those are products matching the marketplace, which seems like a natural. You have to have a need for the product or perceived need, so to speak, of that product. But the other thing is, as part of that, culturally, where the market is headed. So if your product is content, what does the market, what are they consuming now? What are they going to be consuming 5 years from now or 10 years from now? What is the genre that you're writing in, and how do you fit that in, what we face culturally? And more than authors, I can tell you from a product standpoint, probably, the technology that we're using right now, the technology in your phone, even spell check, was owned by a single company in the 80s and 90s, and that company was Smith Corona. They wanted to be in the typewriter business. They sold off all of that technology, and in 1995, they went bankrupt. So you can have a great work or a great cash cow, so to speak, but can you do it next week, next year, 10 years from now? And I think, the business that you're in, certainly people want to propel themselves not only for, more than a one-hit wonder, if they get to that. Mid-ground of building brands is having a unique and defensible position. And it just can't be, from a product standpoint, better, cheaper, faster. People come along and they can either claim that or they are that. Somebody will always come along and make it cheaper. So you truly have to have something unique and defensible. In your business, the question is, what's unique and defensible for that author, for that publisher, for people in the content business, whether it's an influencer? What is unique and defensible about them? And a lot of people are momentarily unique, but it may not be defensible. And I was at a very interesting real estate development today. And I think today it's unique, but it will be unique when someone builds something similar 2 years from now. What is their territory? What's defensible about that? And then, of course, you have to build a brand. The third capsule there is having a seamless back end. So it's channel consumption, availability of product. How am I going to get that content? Purchase experience. Where am I going to get it? And service on the back end. And, to some respect, when you write content, it's about social channels. It's about communicating with people on the back end of, commenting on content. All those three elements have to work together. And if they don't work together, you can't build a brand. And that's true for personal branding also. I hear a lot of amateurs, teaching or commenting about personal branding, which goes for, I guess, every author. But you have to have those three elements involved, and that's products matching marketplace, having unique and defensible position, and then a seamless back end.
Do you think that everyone can identify that position you mentioned?
It's not easy. You're talking about the mid-ground being unique and defensible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be the hardest part of, and especially when it comes to personal branding, about self-discovery, what is unique and defensible? And I think you have to keep taking steps back of who you are, what you are. It's Simon Sinek's why. Why are you involved? And people want to buy the why, they don't want to buy the product. So, and if you can entice them into who you are, what you do, your philosophy, the quality of the content itself and the connection to, an author or a person, then, I think it's much easier. But it seems like that's the really tough ground. I talk to people as a precursor about having unique and defensible position, about creating a brand filter. And this is not a mission statement. This is maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 words that you would have in describing a company, an author, a product. But to me, and I get more involved on the corporate side, it's more about company. So you need to describe what that is. It's interesting, having seen, which surprised me, Taco Bell's brand filter that they drive to all of their stakeholders, employees, everyone involved in the organization, customers, the whole bit. It's about being a revolutionary. It doesn't mention anything about the food business or restaurant business or quick serve business. It's about being a revolutionary in an industry and driving change.
Where does the author's personality fit into the brand?
I've had companies that have actually driven product sales by writing short stories and driving content. One company I worked with, the sole marketing method was writing books and short stories that crossed over into history and basically romanced you within that era and then sold you products within that related to that era. Again, getting back to brand filter, I think you have to look at what you have, what you are, and come up with 3 to 6 words on, what are you as an author? What are you as a brand? And An author is in essence a personality brand. If you look at whatever your favorite sport is, take an athlete, take, an entertainer, take whoever you would know about in a broad public sector, look at them and, see what they are beyond being a baseball player, beyond being a singer or and movie star or whatever they are. Look at the broadness of the brand and where they come from and what they do, put it into 3 to 6 words. But that's what authors need to do as well, or publishing companies need to do.
So what you're saying is that authors nowadays, they could find a source of inspiration for building their brand, or just replicate, look at what these big stars are doing and kind of replicate the same.
You're really not selling the content that you've written. Mm-hmm. You're really selling yourself and the brand. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think of big time authors, people are running to get their books, or, very much in the news now, political writers, where, people run down and will buy whatever book. I'm personally a fan of Mark Levin, who is a constitutional attorney in the political and media spectrum, but people will just, he's at the top of the New York Times bestseller list simply because he has that audience. Now, he uses cross-platform media to attract that audience, but his writing, he's the number one author.
You've worked with top companies who obviously have the money to invest into building a brand. What about an author who's just starting out?
It doesn't matter whether you're large or whether you're small. You still have to start from a foundational standpoint. You have to start with that brand filter, start with a platform and strategy before you spend money on tactics.
What would be, because you mentioned platform several times, and you said that actually the website and social media channels, what people usually refer to as platform, this is not the platform. So what is the platform?
Anything that conveys communications is a tactical element. Platform is what you are about. Okay. So getting back, let's use the term brand filter. It's that 3, 4, 5, 6 word. What is the essence of that? And it may not, it's just not being an author. It's more about the philosophical base of that person. Mm-hmm. The strategy can be writing books, writing articles in magazines, writing, whatever across the platform, doing audiobooks, whatever it is. But again, those are strategies to get to a certain audience. If your audience is, 140 years old, you may want to go into audiobooks versus, or large print. Those are, again, strategies to get to, and then how do you sell a large print book, for example?
So basically the platform is something more rather abstract. It's rather something rather abstract, like the foundation and all the things that we actually can see. Those are the strategies. Those are the tactics.
Tactical things will be communication oriented, how you convey once you have your platform, once you have a strategy on who are the customers and how to get to them, then you execute them by using, if you're, social media, for example, it may be, depending on the audience, Instagram, if it's a younger audience, Facebook ads, it may be, women gravitate to Pinterest more than men do. So it just depends on how the demographics are sliced and diced, but those are tactical issues. If you don't have the correct platform, you can't convey that messaging in the right way to the right audience. Today, brands are philosophically driven. So, to equate yourself or align yourself with a brand, we take a lot of pride. It's what you wear. Mm-hmm. It's the fragrance that you have. It's how you live. It's what you drive. It's all of those things. You want to equate your personality and connect that with specific brands. You may want to be a value-oriented brand. You get back to whatever for dummies, that have made, or the chicken soup, type of things. It's more of a mass produced, make you feel good type of thing, or explanation books. So it's a positioning issue. But if I named any brand to you, you would have an image in your mind if you knew that brand. And people equate it. Even unbrands now are brown paper bag brands with no name on it, are brands. It's a brand philosophy in itself.
Somebody was saying that everybody, whether is aware or not, has a brand. And the difference is that when you actually decide to take action and create it, then you get ownership of your brand. Whereas if you're not, then
I'll define it a little more for you, which is maybe scarier for some. Whether you take action or not, you're building a brand. So regardless of what you do or what you don't do, you are building your brand. I'm often amused by people, especially equating it to consumer products, that always say, no, it's the consumer that tells you what your brand is, which is completely false. If you're not controlling your brand and the messaging around your brand, you're allowing other people to control it. So what you want to do is build a brand your way and control the message and convey it your way. One of the big things, especially for Fortune 100 companies now, and it's true for even individual authors, for example, you have a group of stakeholders. So you want to communicate what your brand is about to people internally, to distributors, VARs, VADs, if you're in the tech business, whatever it is, publishers, to the people that are consuming your content, but to all the stakeholders around you. You want to convey the messaging of what your brand is about. And if you don't simply, crisply convey it, again, back to filter and that 3 to 6 word brand filter, if you don't crisply convey that, somebody else will, unfortunately. Authors and influencers and content people are really the primal thing is struggling on their brand, who they are and what they do.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And one of the really great content people and quasi art directors and content people is an individual runs a company out of New York. It's called Red Lobster, it's called Lobster Phone, which is their, and they're, they have art direction training. I don't know whether it's out of Parsons or whatever, and content, but they basically recreate identities for companies, but they've created this around literally a lobster looking telephone in their office. And they generate content from their easy chair about, brands and design and things. But, you can see an individual in that business really create what they want to create from a messaging standpoint. And it's a hot property. I mean, you go to the design world and people talk about Lobster Phone, strange company name, which seems to be the case today. But I don't know what Google is other than using it every moment of the day. But, crazy names are part of the business now. Yes. But, it just shows you from the standpoint of individual what you can do as far as placing yourself in demand and creating a very unique identity. People
don't buy your books. They buy selling your books is just a byproduct of your brand. So that's what happens when you have, and just as you said earlier, there's these famous authors. I don't think people even care what their books are about or whether they are really good or not. They know, oh, a new Stephen King book is out. Oh, I'm going to buy it just because he's Stephen King.
I get involved a lot from a tactical standpoint with content itself, influencers, PR, all those things. And I think the writing today is very poor. And I can't speak to authors and larger, but I I can say from, today I don't know what AP standards are. They're awful. The writing in newspapers and magazines and content in general is pretty poor. I think maybe getting back to some old standards may be a really interesting position for some of the people out there. Dealing with publishers, it has to be difficult as well. I know more from a media standpoint with video content, whether it's long format or short. The stuff, for example, commercials, the stuff that tests well with groups is a very common format. If you do something unusual, it could be accepted or position you very uniquely, but it probably won't test well. So get it, to get it published, to get it out in the marketplace you may need to do something that's a little different to get it out in the marketplace if it's not in the normal genre, if it's not in, a format, so to speak, that will test well. I think people can learn and do it. I think you have to stick to basics, which may not be the easiest path. The other thing is what is the team around you? And getting back when you start out at affordability, somehow you have to work out, but you need people like yourself. You need people around you that you can build and have a team, however you do that. And certainly people are willing to help.
But yeah, that's something positive to keep in mind. Instead of worrying that, this is going to cost me so much, I can't do it. Just start on this positive note that people are willing to help. And
well, you have to find good people, but you can't, unfortunately, you can't do it all by yourself. You're not an expert in every individual area.
Yeah, that's true.
And if you want to accelerate, if you want to hit those plateaus and jump quickly, which seems to be the thing today, no one wants to sit and, be stagnant. You have to accelerate your brand.
Thank you so much. This has been so informative and so inspiring.
My pleasure.
For all of us. One final word of wisdom from you.
I again, start with platform and strategy. Don't start with tactics because you keep redoing and redoing. So I think, get out of the tactical mode, go back and, maybe I think for everyone here, whether it's, a company, whether it's publisher, whether it's an individual writing or starting out to write, whatever, an author who, wants to be noteworthy, you get back and start with a brand filter and think about those 3 to 6 words on describing who you are and what you do. It's the Simon Sinek why.